This is our first video in a series on how to use the TI-89. In this video, we'll just be doing a general introduction to the keys and some tips on how to type stuff in. Let's get started with turning this on. So this is what the TI-89 looks like. If you're going to find the on button, you'll see it's down here. Hopefully you found that already. When you turn it on, it's possible that your screen might look like this. We are mostly going to be using the home screen, so with it selected you can hit the enter button down here and it'll go here. You can also use this button here that's home, and the other button, the other screen that we might be using a lot is the Y equals screen, which you can get to by pressing the green button and then Y equals up there and then back home. Okay, to turn this off you do second and then the on button turns it off, but for the rest of the time today we'll be using this with it on. If we go back to the screen here, again we want the home screen. One of the things that you want to be able to do is adjust the contrast. You can do that by using the green button here and using the plus and minus buttons here. You can see the little contrast symbol to the right of those. So if I hold that down, hold down the green diamond, I can make it darker or lighter or somewhere in between, and I'm just hitting it repeatedly. But I think that looks pretty good for what we're doing. So as I'm talking about these buttons, you can see that there's this green button here, the green diamond, the blue second button, and the white alpha button. Those are going to be used in order to get to the different things above it. If I zoom in here on the keys, you can see, like, for example, above the Y is a blue sign and a green sign inverse. That's going to get you there using these two buttons. Above these letters or these numbers down here, you can see that there are white letters. That's what the alpha gets you, is those letters. So you can use those sort of like a shift. But there's multiple things you can do. Okay. Including, if you look here, you can see above the caret over here, you can see that there's a blue pi. So if I type second in the caret, you can see that I get a pi. Okay. There's also above the catalog button, which is right in the middle here, you can see that there's a blue I button. That is the imaginary I. We won't be using that too much in calculus, but it does come up on occasion. And then also, you can see above catalog that there's a green infinity symbol, which we will be using in calculus. So we have those. And then the last one of those that I want to talk about is the E. If you look above the X here, let me zoom in, you can see that there's a blue ln and a green e to the x. The easiest way to get the number e is to do the green diamond and then hit the x. And when you do that, it brings up e to the and then a parentheses, and we're just going to delete the exponent and the parentheses, and that's going to give us the number e. Okay, so those are some of the constants and things like infinity that we'll be having to type in that are readily accessible by using the blue and the green buttons to get to them. Okay. Next, I want to tell you that as you're typing things in, one of the most important things you need to do is be careful with your parentheses. Make sure that you are including what's supposed to be included and closing parentheses where appropriate. One trick that I will just get out of the way here, let's say that you wanted to do a fractional exponent, like a 1/3 power or a cubed root. There is a way to get a cubed root to show up, but the easiest thing to do is to type it in and then put that cubed root, the 1/3 power, in parentheses, and that's going to give you the correct answer. I'm going to do it with one that isn't 3 so that you see it. If you didn't put that set of parentheses, you can see that it would give you, it would just raise the 125 to the 1 power and then divide the whole thing by 3. This is a good point to show you how the way that this is showing you after you type it in, even though you're typing it in, let me go back to the correct answer here. Correct way to type it in. Whoops, not there. You're typing it in and it looks like this down here, it's saying it there. That's what's called pretty print. There's a setting if you go to the mode button, which is right here under the white alpha button. If you press that, you can see it brings up a menu. There are lots of things you can set here. One of the things is pretty print. You want that to be set to on so that it does that. Otherwise, when you type things in, it'll just give it back to you with the parentheses and the exponents like that, or the caret. So you want to have that set to being on. One of the nice things you'll notice, maybe you saw above where I typed in 125 to the 1/3 without the parentheses, but I'll show you another example. Let's do the square root, which you'll learn is above the times. Let's do the square root of 24. When I hit enter, it gives me 2 times the square root of 6. You might have been expecting something like 4 point something, but we got 2 times the square root of 6. The reason is because this calculator can give you exact answers instead of approximations. And you wanted to do that, especially for the AP test, because sometimes you'll be doing a problem that's a multiple choice and the answers will all be exact answers and you'll have to know which one it is, and this calculator will actually tell you the correct answer instead of you getting a decimal and then having to figure it out or work it out by hand. But sometimes you also want the decimal answer, so the way you can do that, one way to do that is if you look at the calculator at the enter button that we've been hitting above that, you'll see that there's a green approximate equal to symbol. So what I can do is I can type in the square root of 24, it's already there, and then hit the green and then the approximately equal to, and it'll give us the decimal that you were expecting. Okay. A shortcut though is that if you have that typed in, instead of doing the approximate equal to, if you just include a decimal in your problem somewhere, the calculator will not give you an exact answer. It'll give you the decimal approximation. So if I were doing something like the square root of 0.24, well, let's do one that actually works. So 0.25, which is the square root of 1/4, that should be a half. It's actually going to give you 0.5. It's going to give you the decimal because there was a decimal in the original problem. So if the problem doesn't actually have a decimal, you can see that here it was a whole number 24. I just put the decimal at the end, and that gave me the decimal approximation. So that is one way to do that. Okay. Just so you can see how powerful this is, we're going to look at another example. Let's look at something like square root of 21 times tangent of pi over 3. Now on another calculator, you would get a decimal when you type that in, but we are going to type that in and see what it gives us. So it was the square root of 21. I'm going to close my parentheses, times tangent is the blue above the t, tangent. Remember, pi is above the caret, pi divided by 3. Close my parentheses, hit enter, and I'm going to get 3 times the square root of 7. So it worked that out, gave me the exact answer. Okay. Another problem where it can give me the exact answer. Oops, not that. Let's go here to 936 over 455. So if I type that in, 936 divided by 455, it's going to take that division problem, think of it as a fraction, and give me a fraction in lowest terms, 72/35. Okay. Let's look at another example. Here I'm going to go back to the square root of 21 times tangent, but this time it's going to be pi over 6. So let's look at this. Let me show you another shortcut. You'll notice that we have already typed in square root of 21 times tangent of pi over 3. I don't want to have to type that whole thing in, so a shortcut. I move the cursor up, and I'm just using the arrow keys over here, and I highlight it, and if I just hit enter, it'll copy it down. Okay, so if you're highlighting something up here, and this goes back about, I think it's 30 entries, and you hit enter, it'll copy whichever thing you're highlighting, either the entry over here or the output over here, and it'll put it in down here where you're typing things in. And then we can go back and we can change this to a 6, and we can see that the exact answer is the square root of 7. If we wanted the approximate answer, we could type in a decimal, and that would give us the approximate answer. Okay. Now, you might have been noticing that when I go to edit, the way I'm doing that is I'm using the cursor keys to get to wherever I want to be, and then I hit this back arrow here, and that's going to delete one character at a time. So if I wanted to put the 3 in there, I could delete the 6 and go and put in the 3. So that'll delete one character. Now, if I wanted to, let's just look at that number right there. Maybe I'm trying to type in all the numbers and I notice I hit the 5 twice. I can get the cursor there and move it back, and now I'm good. I've typed in the numbers, I've deleted that 1. But let's say that I wanted to only do 1, 2, 3, 4. I can hit the clear button, which is next to it, and that'll delete everything after the cursor like that. Okay, but if I have the cursor at the end of the string and I hit clear, that's going to delete the whole entry. So if the cursor is at the end of the line and I hit clear, it deletes the entire entry. If it's somewhere in the middle, it deletes everything after the cursor. One last thing I wanted to talk about. You'll notice that my cursor right now is a thin line that I can put in between things. Okay, there's another setting that if you look at the calculator here, if you look at the blue above the backspace, it says INS. That INS button, if you do blue and then hit that, you'll notice that turns it into a fat cursor. What that does is that makes it so when you're moving the cursor, you're typing over things. And so if I type in 4 here, 6, 7, 8, 9, like that, it's just typing over it. When I delete, it deletes the thing before it, not the thing that it's on, which is a little counterintuitive in my mind. If I go back and I do second and then insert again, I get my thin cursor. What's nice about this is when you type, well, first of all, let me delete that 4. When you type in the middle, it doesn't type over anything. It puts it in between the two characters on either side of it. Okay. The last thing I'm going to show you is the storing feature on this calculator. What you can do is you can store a number in any variable here. So I'm going to store 5, and I'm going to use this STO button, that means store. And I'm going to store the number 5 in Z. And you'll notice that with the alpha button and all the letters are listed here A through W, and it skips over T because X, Y, Z, and T are separate buttons that you can use because they're common variables that come up. So you have those. There's also over here, I should point out, there's a theta, so you can use theta as a variable. But anyway, I'm going to store 5 in Z. It says, it tells you what was stored in Z. And what's nice about that is if I wanted to, I could type in something like Z squared. Notice I use the caret for squared, plus 5Z minus 4. And it'll just do it. It'll, use the 5 in there for Z. Now you might be thinking it's just as easy to type in 5 for where Z is, but what if instead of 5 you wanted to store that decimal? You could store that decimal in Z. And now when you type it in, I'm just going to highlight and hit enter so that it copies it down there, hit enter again to enter it, and then it does it with that long decimal. So if you have a number that you're using over and over again in an expression, you can store that in a variable and type in the expression and it'll do that. If you want to clear that out, one way to clear that out is to go to, let me zoom in here. you can see, oh no, you can't because I don't have the function keys on there. So up here, across the top here, you see F1, F2, F3, F4, F5, and above F1, there is a blue F6. If you go to blue F6, you can see that it says clear A to Z. Just as an aside here, if you just hit F1, you can also use the arrow keys to go through these menus to get over to F6. We will be talking about those functions in other videos. And if I hit clear A to Z, that will, and I hit enter to confirm it, that'll clear Z, so that if I type in Z now instead of saying 5, it'll just say Z. Okay. One of the cool things about this calculator is you don't just have the alphabet to store it in. You could actually take something like 24 and store that in, and I'm going to use the alpha here, alpha A, alpha B, the variable AB. Okay. Now what that does is that means that A is still its own variable and B is still its own variable. But if I do AB together, whoops, that's not, you have to hit alpha for both of them. That's going to be 24. Okay. It's sort of like in programming. If any of you are programmers, you can use a string, like a word, to represent the variable. You can do that here. It doesn't have to be 2 letters. You could write time, T-I-M-E, as the variable, and then store something in that in time, and it's more. It can be more descriptive like that. The problem with this is that if you try to do the clear A to Z, well, AB is not in A to Z, and so that still says 24. So the way you have to delete that, or if you want to just delete one variable, you're going to go to catalog, which brings up everything that this calculator can do. And when you're in catalog, if you want to find a function, you can just hit it locks in the alpha, so that if you hit, the 5 down here, it goes to the M. If I hit the 9, it's going to go to the I's. We're going to go to D, which is where our function is. We want to delete variable, D-E-L-V-A-R. So we hit that, it brings up the function down here. We type in the variable that we want to delete, which is AB. It says that it's done, and now when I type in AB, it's no longer 24. All right, one last thing. I think I said one last thing with the other one, but one last thing for real. When I want to use the number E, again, I showed you that you do green and then E to the X, and delete that. Not the whole thing, of course. I did it again. This is a great video. Okay. You can do that, and you can see that if I do approximately equal to, you get 2.71828. Notice that this is different than if I did alpha and then I hit the E here. Okay, hopefully you can see the difference between the italicized E and the not italicized E. This is as if it were a variable. The one above it is the actual number, and if I do the approximately equal to, you can see that it's not going to tell me anything. So just be aware that the E that's above the division sign is a variable, whereas the E above the X is the actual number. All right, that's it, and we'll explore more functions in the next video.